U.S. firearm loopholes, exemptions, antique muskets raise safety concerns over deadly weapons. You gotta be kidding me. What do you mean here, $17.99? If you like this video, hit the subscribe button. It does not cost you anything. And if you like this video, hit the subscribe button. If you don't subscribe anyway. And let's get into this. New Jersey's bad for this sort of stuff, by the way. They did this a long time ago, when they were going after lever action rifles, because, I don't know, for some reason, it makes no sense. Just long before the AR was coming into the world here. U.S. firearm loopholes, exemptions, antique muskets raise safety concerns over deadly weapons. You know, when you have an antique firearm or you have a reproduction musket, it just makes no sense, right? Now, I don't know how to look at this, but the problem lies is politicians are not stupid. They're not stupid. I know people must think they're stupid or they're ignorant or whatever. No, they're not that. The truth of the matter is, they don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in the Bill of Rights. They don't like the Second Amendment. They don't like the Supreme Court when they made a decision at Heller and Bruin, and they based all that on Federalist Papers. This is the point that you have to really ask yourself, you know, how you just look at this. It just makes no sense. You're probably seeing the stories about the Revolutionary War reenactments who were visiting at museums where a Brown Bess musket hangs on the wall. What you might not know is that many of these guns and their modern replicas operate in the gray area of the federal law. The Gun Control Act of 1968 carved out an exemption for antique firearms that manufactured in or before 1898. Lawmakers at the time wanted to protect collectors and historians from paperwork burdens, not New Jersey. Today, that same carved out leaves weapons capable of killing at close range outside most background checks, requirements, and serial number rules. You can't make this shit up. You can't. Now, the roots of the federal rule. Lawmakers in 1968 faced pressures to regulate modern firearms, flooded the market after the assassinations of urban violence. At the same time, they heard the arguments from historians and lobbyists who warned that strict rules would harm a legitimate interest in early American artifacts. Senator John Towers pushed for language excluding flintlocks, percussion ball guns, small pieces from the definition of a firearm. The final text focuses on the ignition system and production dates rather than lethally. That narrows focus on some governors' federal oversights more than half a century later. It gets stupid after a while because long before the AR-15 platform came in, New Jersey was already involved in this way back in the 60s. Now, at the time, some goofball senator, Democrat, held up a flintlock and said, "You could rob a liquor store with this thing." Now he didn't. He finally got his gun control nonsense through. Where you have to go through a whole bunch of paperwork and stuff that did just to get that firearm. Now later years down the road, you had to follow through the whole 9 yards with the paperwork, background checks and all, just to own a flintlock or a percussion ball or a pistol or what it may be, right? But at that time, they were also after the lever action rifles too. Collectors continue buying and sell these pieces of actions and gun shows without checks required of any contemporary rifle or handgun. The exemption was never meant to create a loophole for dangerous weapons yet. Now, understand this. Now, this flintlock, percussion ball, or whatever, now it's an assault rifle, according to politicians and what they're just coming out to. Dangerous weapons. Weapons of war. You can't make this shit up. You just can't. Yet the functions that they weigh are in practice for anyone who wants to unregulate muzzleloaders. How muskets qualify for exemptions, the genuine pre-1898 flintlock, or a faithful replica built to the same specification falls under the antique definition as long as it has not been converted to accept modern fixed ammunition. Federal regulations treat it like a historical object instead of a firearm. You can transfer ownership privately in most states, not New Jersey, without a background check, not New Jersey. You need a background check for this. Check NER record for sales. Even replica kits sold online often arrive already assembled into working guns that met the exemption criteria. It just goes on to, design, approve of backlog. Testament draws hard, 1998, because of the year. See, what they want to do is they want to treat this type of firearm. Oh, here you go. Load a 75 caliber lead ball into a well, maintain the barrel best, and you can send it downrange at roughly 1,000 feet per second. That is enough velocity to penetrate flesh, bone, and typically endangerment distance. I love this. This is ridiculous. Reenactors and historians have long known the capabilities, but generally public rears concerns. The general public, politicians, they did this. Concerns when the conversion turns into gun safety. The ball created a large wound, channeled the carriage round, enough energy to cause fatal damage, even without high velocity expansion, the modern day hollow point. These weapons lack rapid fire capabilities like the AR-15, yet deliberately lethal force in a single well-armed shot. Headlines and the idea is an unrelated, high-powered, single shot. Okay, I got to read this again. Or I here. The shooting demonstrated headlines that the idea of an unregulated, high-powered, single-shot weapon strikes any observers and overlooks vulnerability. Without restrictions, federal law does not classify muskets as firearms. NICS database lookups occur. No waiting period, private sellers, obligations by seller identified, enthusiasts. It just goes on and on. Pushback from safety advocates. Now, anti-gun people want to push this. This is interesting. Anti-gun people want to push this. Recent coverage of the loophole has prompted renewal of the debate on state legislatures among public health and researchers. Advocates argue that any weapon powerful enough to kill should face at least minimum oversight, regardless of its age, ignition system. A handful of states, including New York, have already tightened their own definitions, requiring background checks for anti-firearms. New Jersey is one of them. Federal law enforcement reviewed 1898 cutoff points. It just gets in. Balancing history and modern day needs. The tensions reflect on the border of Americans struggling over firearm policies. Preserving access right to the past matters, but does not acknowledging that the past produced weapons a bit dangerous to those manufacturers of today. Like I said, people, you can't make this stuff up. You can't. What they're trying to do is, I said this 1,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000 times again, they want us totally disarmed. It's not just the AR-15s, like I said before. If they hit the AR-15s and they hit the M1 Grands, the M1 carbines, then it goes into the bolt action rifles, and it goes into the lever action rifles, and it goes right on down the line, when you totally everything. Handguns, pistols, you name it. Now, let's shoot on the offset of this. They're all weapons of war. All have been used on the battlefield. All have been proven and tested. I like to see some of these modern Army guys turn around and said, well, I took a musket into combat and it was lethal and deadly. Like they complain about the AR-15. I took this weapon out and like this out in combat. I'm surprised we don't get one idiot as they say, well, I took a muzzleloader out there and it was lethal. And some people believe in that. You can't make this stuff up. You can't. This shows proof time and time again. I said 1,000 times. It's not just the ARs they want all of it. So then, keep your friends and family close. Do not be afraid to defend yourselves and train regularly. I'll catch you around. And understand the bullshit they play. Take care.